Hey guys, Lancer here. Hope everyone's doing well. This is going to be part 6 of the reserve list reviews. Please like and subscribe if you think this is valuable. And let's get to it. So the first card we have is Brand of Ill Omen. The Brand of Ill Omen is 3 colorless, 1 red, enchant creature. Cumulative upkeep, pay 1 red. Target creature controller cannot cast summon spells. An enchantment heavy deck, which usually doesn't have red to begin with, so it might be a bit of a lose-lose right there, it would still be annoying. You're only going to get one person locked down, but if you can get the green, green deck locked down that's playing its big creatures, then you might get him coming after you later, but this is still pretty powerful. The cumulative upkeep is going to be annoying. You might only be able to slow him down by about 2 or 3 turns. Anyways, interesting card. And I will also try to avoid using interesting too many times. Moving on, we have Chromatic Armor. Chromatic Armor. Okay. Chromatic Armor is 1 colorless, 1 blue, 1 white. Enchant creature. I will go straight to this to read it properly. As Chromatic Armor enters the battlefield, choose a color. Chromatic Armor enters the battlefield with slight counter on it. Prevent all damage that will be dealt to enchanted creature by source of the last chosen color. Pay X. Put a slight counter on Chromatic Armor and choose a color. X is the number of slight counters on Chromatic Armor. So this is pretty much a choose the color that you want to protect your creature against. I also think that this is actually a pretty cool card. I think that it is a card that can go in a Voltron-like commander deck. You probably a lot of other enchant creatures and enchantments and auras and runics auras that we have in Kaldheim. But I think the best thing about this, the color at instant speed, as long as you're willing to pay the amount for this card each time, means that it's going to be hard to target it. And it does say prevent all damage that'll be dealt. So it feels like a pretty cool card. So, I don't know. Maybe in a Voltron deck. Moving on. Centennial Centaurs. Oh boy, man, these names. It's a 3 colorless, 1 green. Summon creature. Echo. During your next upkeep, after this permanent comes under your control, pay its casting cost or sacrifice it. You had to pay 8 mana for this total. It has Shroud. This permanent cannot be the target of spells or abilities. I don't think it's that bad. It costs 8 for a 6/3 with hexproof Shroud. So in some ways, there are far better ways or far better cards that already have this ability. Normally, when you have a card like this, you don't really care about its power and toughness because you plan to equip it with stuff that you control and make sure that it's tough enough to beat anything on the opponent's side without being taken out by a removal spell. But it's a cool card. Moving on, Cycle of Life. Interesting art. Poor fairy. So Cycle of Life is 1 colorless, 2 green, and I'm moving straight on to this. Return Cycle of Life to its owner's hand. Target creature you cast this turn becomes a 0/1 until your next upkeep. At the beginning of your next upkeep, put a +1/+1 counter on that creature. Interesting. So, okay, so you pretty much pay 3, you enchant a creature, and then you let it disappear to become a 0/1. The problem is the creature's still on the field. It doesn't even get replaced. And then when it comes back as the same creature, but as the original creature, power and toughness, you put a +1/+1 counter on it. This feels like a painful way to add a +1/+1 counter. I am actually going to be working on a reserve list only deck that hopefully costs less than 100, but I'm going to have to say that some of these cards that are spiking in the last couple of days, they make no sense and they're not going to make my life any easier to actually do that. So we'll see how that goes. But I think this is a very long-winded way of getting your creatures to be a bit tougher. Not totally worth it in my eyes. Moving on. Daughter of Autumn. Daughter of Autumn is 2 colorless, 2 green. Summon Legend. Pay white, redirect to Daughter of Autumn, 1 damage dealt to a white creature. Ugh. Alright, that's actually not that complicated to read, it's just I was getting tongue-tied. So it's a 2/4. It's terrible. You had to pay 1 white for each damage, and you had to be able to block it from a white creature. I can't see any uses for it. The art looks pretty interesting. I was actually going to cover the art, but I think I have another video that's going to try to do this in a faster, more efficient way. I just kind of want to talk through this card and see them for the times that I can. We'll see how that goes. Yeah, all good. Moving on. Delphi's Cube. Delphi's Cube is a 1-mana artifact that already is catching my eye. It says, pay 2, tap. This turn, when target creature you control attacks and isn't blocked, it assigns no combat damage this turn, and you put a combat counter on Delphi's Cube. Pay 2, remove a cube counter from Delphi's Cube, regenerate target creature. Yeah, okay, you're preventing damage to then regenerate a creature. That sounds a really long-winded way to protect your creature. You had to pay a 5 mana to do this every time. I don't think this card is worth it. It probably shouldn't even have gotten up to 83 cents from its 56. You can find it for 18 cents on TCG. Do not friendly with these guys. But I'll leave it at that, and we'll see what happens, guys. The last couple of days have been crazy. I've been keeping an eye on these so that I can try to make my decks and try to put my cards together. And some of these are just getting out of reach of my limits on what goes into these decks that I'm planning to put together. And I'm running out of cards now. So next one, Discordant Spirit. Discordant Spirit is 2 colorless, 1 black, 1 red. It says at the beginning of each end step, that's interesting. If it's an opponent's turn, put a +1/+1 counter on Discordant Spirit for each 1 damage dealt to you this turn. At the beginning of your end step, remove all +1/+1 counters from Discordant Spirit. I like this card a lot. I mean, there are so many ways to benefit from this. This pretty much says that all the damage that's coming through to you from your turn, the end of your turn, 1, 2, 3 opponents, back to you, is then stored up in this creature until your next turn. So if one guy does 2 damage to you, another one does 5, another one does 2, then you have 9 damage. So this is a 9/9. Worst case, you could even force your opponents to do damage to you. And then you can make this like a 20/20, or they will have to finish you in 1 turn. You could fling it, you could sacrifice it, you could move the counters around. I think this is actually interesting. I have a deck that cares about +1/+1 counters on creatures, and the fact that they can come back if they have a +1/+1 counter, and usually that's really hard to find in colors that aren't green or even green mostly. So yeah, I'm surprised that there's a card like this out there, and it's cheaper than I would have expected. So very, very, yeah, very, very cool. I held myself back then. And moving on, Divine Retribution. Divine Retribution is 1 colorless, 1 white. Instant. For each attacking creature, Divine Retribution deals 1 damage to target attacking creature. For each attacking creature, Divine... Okay. So pretty much it's a removal spell that's desperate to get as many cards, many small creatures attacking you, so you can take out one of the big creatures attacking you. It's not that good. It has moved a lot in the last couple of days. I'd be very careful with this kind of stuff. 49 cents on TCG. It's from Mirage. Art looks interesting. Someone getting struck by lightning. But other than that, I can't really see any value in this. Moving on. Draconian Silix. The Draconian Silix is the 3 colorless artifact. Pay 2, tap, discard a card at random from your hand. Oh, to regenerate a target creature. Oh, I hate discarding cards at random. Oh, no. Nah, I would not want this anywhere. there's no deck that I'd want this in because you might discard a card that's actually valuable. Your opponents would love it, but so maybe you can figure out a way to get them to take the pain. But I can't see any value in this. And last card is Dwarven Armorer. 1 red. Summon Dwarf. That's pretty cool. And he has spiked almost double the price in the last couple of days, but let's continue reading. So, pay 1 red, tap, discard a card, put a 0/0/1 counter or a +1/+0 counter on target creature. You can do this at instant speed. Discarding cards is a thing. This is actually quite an interesting card. I feel like there's going to be places for it where it's useful. I kind of wish that it just had +1/+1 counter, but that'll make it a bit too powerful for how old this card was and probably how useful it was for when it was printed. So I think this is cool. I like it. It's probably not going to stay in any price range that I can use if it spikes like this. That's pretty much just a mountain staircase straight out. And I can only hope that it comes back down so I have a bigger pool to make my reserve list cards, or maybe I just had to be less creative and less cost effective and just make it in my head and then put it out there for you guys. Anyways, thanks for listening, guys, and please like and subscribe. I might have rambled on a bit there, but hopefully you got some value out of it, and see you on the other side.